Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. Across from me is...
Nelson Gonzalez.
It's nice to have you here again, but to actually record this time. I do hope that people enjoyed the separate conversation that we had, because what ended up happening in the interview one is I kept asking you questions about Venezuela, and so now we've talked a lot about Venezuela.
Yeah.
And people know that about us. So cool. But let's get to know you specifically. So who are you? What do you do?
Let's see. That's a hard question. But I am a bass player. I play electric. I play upright bass. I work as a gigging musician.
Mm-hmm.
I am kind of getting into the realm of being a composer and arranging stuff.
You're wearing a bass shirt.
I am wearing a bass shirt. I didn't notice. I just grabbed the shirt and then I was like, man, it's a shirt that says bass. That's so... It's like...
Yeah.
But I'm a UCO student, and I am also the person in charge of SaintsSessions, which is pretty much a weekly jazz event.
Heck yeah.
And I'll go further into it later.
Yeah. So then how did you... All of these things seem to gravitate around music. How did you get started on music?
Man, let's see. It goes all the way back into my childhood. But it is kind of funny because it's like no one in my family is really a musician. Like both my mom and my dad kind of were into the artistic into the arts when they were young. Like my mom used to sing for folk groups and stuff like that.
Yeah.
My dad did theater for a while. Mm-hmm. So, but none of them decided to choose a career. And the rest of my family, they're all engineers. I mean, we talked about that. Venezuelan
Everyone's
engineer.
an engineer.
So, but my family always loved music.
Mm-hmm.
So we used to live in a house. I was born in Caracas, but I spent the majority of my childhood in a small town called San Joaquin in the state of Carabobo. Mm-hmm. So we had this big house where we lived. My mom, my grandparents, my aunt, and my uncle, and we only had one stereo, one big thing. So they were always fighting to put music all day. So my grandparents was always into folk kind of music, and then my mom will be into salsa and merengue, and for some reason my uncle was very into ska music and reggae. And my aunt she was at that time she would have been 16, 17, so she was through that early 2000 American pop rock. So she will always put Backstreet Boys or Linkin Park. So I kind of grew up with all those things,
Backstreet Boys and Linkin Park go hand in hand.
Same thing. Yeah. She also had CDs of System of a Down, so it was just really funny. It would be NSYNC and then Toxicity. But so I grew up with all of those genres, just playing constantly, and it's I just grew up liking all of them, and I was very open minded, and I was well, what's actually going on? And I played the Venezuelan cuatro when I was a kid. But it's kind of how would you describe it?
It's somewhere in between a guitar and a ukulele.
Kind of. It's a big ukulele. In the technique, it's different, but it's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So I grew up playing that. Then I had a rock phase, and I was I want to play piano I don't know, the guy from Dream Theater or whatever. Sure. But that didn't last long. And then my dad bought me a bass because in high school I wanted to play music, but everyone played guitar, and I was man, I am not gonna be one of those. And one of my friends, his name was Francisco. He was always annoying me. He's we have to have a band, and he already played guitar. So I was man, no,
not another guitarist.
So he told me well, you can try bass, and he just sent me a bunch of links and Hotmail Messenger. That's how old I am. So, about I don't know, Flea from Red Hot Chili Pepper and Cliff Burton from Metallica and all those people. So I annoyed my dad to buy me a bass for my birthday, and then I started on bass. And then,
do you still have that bass?
I do. It's a blue Squier Fender bass.
Nice.
A jazz bass, man. It's pretty great. I love the bass. I have a new bass that it was super expensive and whatever, and I love it. But there's some things that I just grabbed that blue bass that it was probably the equivalent of $250. Yeah. And I still grab it. It's man, this sounds amazing. I love it.
It's the sound that you know and grew into. So what kind of stuff were you playing with this early teenager band?
Man, I went from with that friend, we just played Metallica covers or whatever. And then I had another group of friends that we decided to have a deathcore band or something like that.
Yeah.
But that didn't last long. And then I had like a quote unquote kind of reggae pop band right after I graduated high school. We played a couple gigs, but it was like we only had like 4 songs, and we were like, man, we need to like do more than 4 songs. Like we never did. So those were our 4 hits, but that's it. And yeah, after high school, when I started studying music, was that like I discovered like jazz and all this stuff.
So going back to that, how did you get to the point to where, I mean, like you said, your parents engineers, your whole family's engineers, and so it's like, how do you get to the point to where you're graduating high school and you're like, I want to study music and not the thing that my parents are pressuring me into? How did you decide that, and then how did they take it?
Okay, at first it was like in Venezuela, it was interesting because like when I graduated high school, I actually wanted to study was like be a sound engineer and like music production. Because it's like one of my best friends, he was dating this girl that she was like really into like the music scene and whatever. And like she told me about like master classes about music production that I had no idea. Like, I didn't knew anything about music production, but I still went. And I found that world pretty interesting. So I wanted to do that once I graduated high school. But the only school that taught like music production and sound engineering and all that stuff in Venezuela, you had to be like 18 years old to be like quote unquote an adult. And when I graduated high school, I was 16. So they were like, no, we can't accept you. And I was like, what am I going to do for 2 years? Like, I'm not going to like go and study a boring career for 2 years or like whatever. And like my mom was happy with the sound engineer because the word engineer was on it. So that friend who's dating that girl, his name is Rudy, he was going to start studying music. And I told my mom, I was like, well, Mom, like I want to study sound engineer. And I believe that if I have knowledge about music, it will be easier to be a sound engineer, producer, whatever. So I convinced her and was like, hey, can I start studying music for a year and a half? And once I turn 18, I start the sound engineer career. She was like, okay. So, and I started on that. And 2 years later, I fell in love with like music. At that time, I was like studying like music, kind of like focused on like theory and like kind of like, it wouldn't be music education, but it was like very like theory oriented. So I changed to another institute that focused on like jazz and performance. And then I just never went back to the sound engineer part, and I just stayed there. And my mom just wanted me like, my mom was like pretty open-minded, but my mom and my dad. So like, as long as I was like not flaky about what I wanted to do, they were like, okay, if you showed, exactly. If I wasn't like responsible and like determined to do what I wanted, because I think we mentioned that on the other one that it's
might
like,
have been. But yeah, as soon as you get flaky, we're gonna smack you into engineering. So you have all of those influences from when you were growing up, like Backstreet Boys, Linkin Park, and then also like reggae, ska, and like salsa and stuff. What are your biggest influences now?
Man, it's complicated because it's like I can like break it down in parts and be like influences in composers, influences in players, and just influences about even just Venezuelan musicians. So like I can divide it in those 3. So if it's performers, bass players, there's people like Christian McBride, that's like this incredible upright bass player. There's Scott LaFaro and Eddie Gomez, who are the bass players for Bill Evans, who's an amazing jazz piano. And people just look at their trio stuff. It's amazing. It will change your life. But those kind of performers in kind of like the composing kind of side, I've been looking a lot into like the kind of contemporary jazz kind of deal, both for big band and not. So there's people like Ben Patterson and Maria Schneider that compose amazing stuff for big band. But there are also stuff like, there's this trumpet player named Ambrose Akim-Musier that he makes a lot of like weird contemporary music, like chamber music with jazz, with rap. So exactly, I really like that kind of vibe. And there's like this like new kind of thing coming out of Venezuelan musicians that it's not necessarily jazz. It might be pop, but the way that you're just kind of like developing that sound, developing like what we are, it's interesting. It's defining ourselves like now that we have to compete in an international market because pretty much we all left Venezuela. So now we have to compete anywhere else. She's defining what like, well, we can't rely on the same, you know, fan base from Venezuela that just love us because we were in Venezuela and we just happened to be popular. You know, like we have to define our style, our music, and I don't know. It's
can't quite be just big in Venezuela. And then how do you think that, I don't think I asked this last time, but kind of we talked about it, how the Venezuelan music makes its way into the stuff that you're making? How does that influence your stuff?
There's like, it's unconscious and conscious at the same time. Like there's sometimes that like it just like happens. I'm not trying to do it. I'm trying to like write a swing chart or like something very like jazz heavy, contemporary, abstract, avant-garde, and just like happens to just come in and just it's just there. And I was like, okay, I can tell that comes from something, you know. And sometimes there's times that I do it definitely like on purpose. There's times like, hey, I want to write this tune in a specific like drum pattern that is an Afro-Venezuela style, and this is what I'm trying to do. So I think it's an influence that I can't take away from me. Yeah, it's just deciding if I want to be obvious about it or not.
And then acknowledging the obvious, you are not in Venezuela. You are here in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
How did you get from there to here and still doing music?
Man, let's see. The institute where I was studying, I was a junior. I was about to be a senior. Had this issue with the government, and they had to close because the government wanted like all of those private institutes. If you were not like a big university, you had to comply with certain rules and certain like, what will be the certain trains of thoughts. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. So ideologies.
That's the term. And obviously, this place where I was like did not want it to like. So they took away the fact that your undergrad, like your bachelor's, will be like recognized by the government. So like you can get a degree there, but like it would not mean anything. You know?
Yeah.
So a lot of people just start dropping out, and that led to the place to close. And then I was just like, well, here I am. Yeah. So my dad's been living here in the U.S. for like 20 years and in Oklahoma for like 8 years now. Because, well, he got a second degree here, blah, 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 blah. He lived in Orlando, moved here. Making the long story kind of short. So my dad told me, it's like, hey, well, we can start the process. And I had to do all the process, go through all the embassies and deal with all the awkward interviews. Like, are you a terrorist? Are you going to like bomb my country? And it's like, no, sir. I just want to study music. Okay, cool. And
yeah. You could probably just be like, hey, do you know what a F sharp fully diminished 7 with a third in the bass is? And they were like, all right, you're good.
Too nerd for
being a third. All right, you're actually a musician. Shut the hell up now. So did you end up, like, why did you choose Oklahoma other than just like, your dad was here? Like, is that pretty much?
I mean, partially, yeah. Like, I like the idea of, like, I don't know, staying closer to my dad. So, I don't know, for personal reasons, I never grew up that much with my dad. So, it's kind of, like, cool to have him now. Yeah. And also because it was cheaper, you know. Like, my dad, like, I have 2 brothers, so my dad takes care of them. So, my dad doesn't really support me financially. So, while I was living with him, I lived with him. He lives in Tulsa. I lived 2 years with him in Tulsa. So during that time, I was pretty much, I still had to work. Sometimes I had to help him pay rent and stuff like that. You know, he was just providing me a house. Yeah. And that was fun. Man. Yeah. And that was fun. I loved living with my dad, and I still love visiting him. Yeah. So I decided to stay in Oklahoma because I was like, well, I can try to be the stereotypical like foreigner purpose of going to Berkeley, but it's like, I don't have $80,000 per semester. So... And everywhere else, like, I could get scholarships and stuff, but I was like, I figured it would be easier. Yeah.
And then Tulsa to UCO, how'd you make that transition?
I was looking into college. Once I decided, I was like, okay, I'm not going to go to Berkeley or New School of Music. Right. I can't afford it. I was like, well, I need to look for places here. And what can I do? So I talked to people. Like, I started in Tulsa Community College. I did my first 2 years there. So I talked to people. I was like, hey, jazz programs, like this kind of degrees, what should I look into? They were like, well, there's NSU, but like there's nothing in Tahlequah. And I was like, man, I can't go there. And they're like, there's OSU, which the program it's okay, but I was still not convinced.
And Stillwater is kind of out there.
Yeah. For a foreigner, Stillwater, not a great place.
Sure.
Yeah, it's like,
it's a farming town.
Yeah. It's like, if you're not white, it's not. It's not fun. But so they told me about UCO. So I came and did a tour and all that stuff. And man, I loved it. Like just the few teachers that I got to meet, it was incredible.
Yeah.
And I really feel like comfortable with the place, discovering places like the jazz club. I was like, man, this is pretty much just a jazz club, but from the university. And I was like, that was so cool.
Yeah.
And I just discovered all the things that UCO had to offer. And I was like, I feel comfortable here. I think this is the place.
Yeah. How does that compare to the music institute that you had in Venezuela?
Well, it's like that music institute was a small music institute.
Right.
So like I will take classes with like, I don't know, 7 people. You
Sure.
know? So like,
and
like, it's not like a campus. It's just like it's small, it's kind of a house.
A small building.
Yeah. It's like a small building that's kind of like a huge house, but it's a small building. So there's like 8 classrooms and that's it. You know? And someone in the secretary that just tells you, oh yeah, you know, here's your schedule, or if you need to enroll, just talk to me. You know, I'm the guy that does everything. So that was just kind of the deal. So it's kind of interesting to go in now. Like it's a university, it has a campus. It's like hundreds of people.
Right. Well, we kind of talked about in the last podcast that we did about how like the standards and quality are like different here. How like the US is kind of lazy. So is the difference, like, do you see a difference in that with UCO?
In the music aspect?
Yeah.
Definitely. Because it's like the first place that I was studying in Venezuela, that it was called Ars Nova before the other institute that was called Escuela Itinerante de Música. It's a long time. So like the first one was very heavy on the theory. And it's like, you will not, like the last test will be like, she will just sit you down and like put you like a, like 3 chords and you have to write a chord, but it's timed, you know, like, and it would be just
rigorous.
It would be really rigorous. Like if you could not like say what key, like you're in like 10 seconds, she will fail you. She will be like, you're not on the level to like, she will like you have to take like a music fundamentals class that is super hard because you have to learn how to read in all clefs and just know how to like build chords, just know how to sight read relatively properly. So like it was really rigorous. So like sometimes I get here and it's like, I know that it depends on the person because there's people that are extremely talented, but then you go to, there's certain things that you go to like music theory for, and there's always that guy that's like, still doesn't know what key you're in, and it's like, man, like in Venezuela
they would have this far.
In Venezuela, like you would like, there will be people that will be kicked out of the institute. If, like for 2 semesters you couldn't make it, you're out. Like I'm not gonna let you in. That's it. So
and then what about just like jazz in general?
Well, in that aspect, I do say like obviously like jazz is like an American thing, so it's easier. It's not more natural here than over there. Obviously, I had great teachers. Like most of the people that taught in my institute were people that got out from like New School Music, Berkeley. I forgot another school. I think Manhattan School of Music, and there was another guy that studied. I can't remember.
Juilliard or something
like that. Yeah. So like they were all like heavily trained in jazz, and they were pretty good. But like, you know, like for people it's not that easy. Like the swing 8-note, it's not super natural for us. So it will take time. But
all right, going into what do you write about, if that is even, since you're writing more like tunes rather than songs? Do you even like write about things?
Yes and no. Like there are certain tunes that they just come out, and then I just put a title that I just like. I always have a lot of fun with titles for the tunes because I always try to like, give them a meaning, whether the meaning is just a kind of like a funny meaning or something just that it's like something just mildly relevant in my life to like something that it's important. To put examples, like I wrote a tune that I was like, it's just a funny blues that I wrote kind of like in the Thelonious Monk kind of style because it's super disjunctive, and I just dedicated it to like my parrot. It's like I had a parrot in Venezuela named Rachel, so I just dedicated that blues to Rachel. So it's cool. But then I played a tune this last combo concert that I brought that it's called Chromo Interference. That Chromo Interference is a piece of artwork that it's in the airport in Caracas, Venezuela, the Simon Bolivar Airport, that is like in the floor. So people argue that that's like the last thing that you see from Venezuela whenever you leave. So it's kind of like people make like a lot of poetry about that thing. That it's kind of like, well, it's very nostalgic for us to think about that piece in particular because that means you're leaving and you might not come back.
Yeah.
So like that tune was based on that. So that kind of stuff. So
yeah. Do you write songs with words?
I did not. I've been wanting to, but like that's one of the things that I do feel like really self-conscious about. So
and then tell me about Saints. How'd you get into that?
Let's see. I discovered what Saints was because when I was still in Tulsa Community College, there's this trumpet player, like amazing trumpet player named Bishop Marsh, who like he plays like a professional and he's only like 20 years old. Like he's crazy. It's absolutely insane. If you can go listen to him,
sure,
just go. He's actually playing at the end of this month in Saints.
Whoa, okay, yeah.
But he will always like, he didn't even have a car, so he would like just grab one of those Greyhound buses and just come to SaintsSessions.
Wow.
And he would tell me like, man, there's this place called Saints that does this event named SaintsSession, and a lot of good players perform in that and stuff like that. And he will always be talking about that. And at that time I didn't know. So once I moved here to UCO, someone told me about SaintsSession. I was like, oh, that's that event that this guy was talking about. So I went down and just like he said, like there's a lot of great players performing there. Like the event is really fun. The venue is really great. And I was like, nice. Then like a year after that happened, I started working with Christian Pearson, primarily for like gigs and stuff. I had a show there. I think it was September 5th of last year, if I remember correctly. And then me and Christian was just started talking. Like my degree is actually in arts administration. I'm not a music major. So like he was kind of like, oh, okay. So you like that part, like administration area, management and stuff like that. And at one point, like he asked me for like, if I could help him a little bit. So I started helping with like the door, just maybe finding some people to play until at one point, like Christian was kind of like, well, I need to focus on other stuff to build OK Sessions. Like all the stuff that he's doing is incredible.
Yeah. It's getting huge.
It's huge. It's like amazing. Like I admire that guy. So he needed a little bit like more space to take care of like the other bigger stuff. And at the end he was kind of like, hey, do you mind if you actually can like dedicate your time? It was actually specifically to SaintsSession to like, and I obviously said yes, and I was really happy about it. And it's an incredible project. Like I really like it.
Are you finding it hard to get enough people, or is there just a surprising abundance of jazz musicians that we didn't know about?
You mean to find people to book or find
to book?
I mean, there's a lot of jazz musicians here. Sometimes it's hard to find like do people that want to play like new music, because that's the purpose of what I want to give to SaintsSession is I want people to like this be like a safe space for you to like bring your weird tunes, bring the tunes that you're not going to play on the corporate gigs, you know, bring your music, express yourself and stuff like that. So there's sometimes that like I get people and they just get there and just call standards, and it still sounds amazing and I love it. They're amazing players, but it's just kind of like I would prefer like to like explore your like musicality in this place. It's not a corporate gig you're not playing.
Right.
I would prefer if this is not another background gig.
Yeah. Especially because it happens every week.
Yeah.
You want to hear something cool every week.
Yeah. So, but there's a lot of players here and there's a lot of people doing really cool stuff. Like last week I featured a group from OSU. Like they're like, some of them are still students, some of them already graduated. And they were incredible. Like half of those players, I didn't knew them. And I was just like, man, like, these guys are amazing.
Yeah.
Where the heck were you? You know?
Yeah. Do you have like a goal for what you want SaintsSessions to become?
Eventually I would like to be, it's to fulfill the void that like OKC doesn't have a jazz club. Because in this case, I cannot fully do that because this is not like a club dedicated to that. This is not my venue. This is just a venue that like gives me a space every week to do this event. But I feel that like there needs to be a good jazz environment in OKC, just like there's Duet in Tulsa that like brings all this big artists and it's like amazing and it's dedicated to that. I feel that Saints could potentially become that. But like it's a lot of work focusing on like, you know, promotion, trying to see if I can get people to like sponsor this to get more money for the bands and stuff like that. So
tell me about arts administration. We talk so much about music, but then making the music happen is just as, if not even more important than playing the music.
Yeah. Man, it's like, I remember like I met this guy one time that he lives in Spain that like he was a guitar player and whatever. It was one of those master classes that I told you that I just went. And he said that like he pretty much like he studied music, so he was a guitar player, but like he focused on like working for a studio, booking for a studio, and managing like the studio time.
Yeah.
So like he will like put down like the calendar, like here's the bands, here are the time slots. He will make the budget for the band. He will make the budget for like the studio and like prep it all. And the cool thing was like he was still a musician, so sometimes like if he needed to like find the musicians, he will like include himself in the budget. And he's like, I'm a guitar player, I can record your album too.
Yeah.
So like it was like pretty interesting that he will do that job, and I found that so interesting, finding that balance between like managing budgets, taking care of like what needs to be done for like an album to be recorded, but also still like record that album, still play with the artists and stuff like that. So that kind of inspired me. Like my mom is really huge into like administration and stuff like that, even though she's an engineer, but she got a master's in like, I forgot the name. It's something about administrations.
Sure.
Like business administration, I guess. It has
Might
a
have been.
long title, but so my mom was always good with that. I always like admired her, the way that she planned things, the way that she was just really organized. And I was like, man, I feel that like I can bring more to like a music scene by doing more things than just playing and writing music, you know. And I love to play and I love to write music and stuff like that, but I feel that I could bring something else. You know?
What are the challenges that people wouldn't normally consider or think about that like, or even especially whenever you getting into this, it's like, I didn't realize that this was going to be such a hard aspect of this.
Man, finding money for music, it's really hard. It's really hard to convince people, like convince sponsors, convince venues, convince things. It's like, hey, we're trying to grow like a art scene, a music scene, a jazz scene, or like anything, just like in the OKC area and in the city, you know. And it's like we need sometimes help, you know. And it's hard for some people to understand because they sometimes don't get it. And like in the jazz aspect, it happens because people think that just background music, because most of the time the jazz gigs are just corporate gigs. Like some people play us to play in a party and be furniture jazz, but like Lee Rucker came with the term and it's perfect. Just in a corner and we just furniture that happens to play.
Right. You might as well just put a record on or just play Spotify, but hey, we've got money to throw in the direction, so let's have real humans do it.
And it's fun, but it's really hard to convince people, especially for something like this is not music that it's gonna be for like background or for people dancing, you know. It's just like this is creation, you know. We're like giving the opportunity to artists to like create something. Yeah. And I feel that like that just helps an art scene, that just helps a city develop. Just like any other form of art. But man, sometimes it's rough. It's just people that are like, oh yeah, I'll put money. It's like, aren't like $10 for each musician? Okay. And I'm like, no, that's not.
Yeah.
It's like,
how much time it takes to do this thing?
Yeah.
So kind of more broader philosophical questions about music. Wait, real quick. 2 things before getting to those. What is the goal of your career? Like pie in the sky goal, I guess.
And be able, first of all, I can say like the simple kind of part of the goal. That will be eventually not have to depend on playing just all the gigs that I can find to survive. Eventually be able to like have a job in music, especially in the management part, that I feel that I am giving something to the scene, giving something to the musicians that have taught me so much, and benefit from it, both like in a monetary way and more artistically. So I want eventually to just dedicate to that part, because I love the part of just giving the opportunity to people to create, and then they come up with something incredible, you know. Just like that, I don't know, for some reason that really makes me happy, you know.
You don't necessarily have to be the one to create it for it to make you happy.
And I guess the end goal is just that, becoming not an important figure, because I don't want people to know me necessarily. You know, I don't want to be famous or anything. It's just the part of like being able to, through effort or whatever connections, like open up a very safe environment for arts, for music, for jazz music particularly, but like can be for anything. In which artists could be recognized, could get paid decent money for what they do, be recognized as someone that puts an effort into doing something. So
Yeah. No, that sounds awesome. And then what's a musical hurdle that you've gotten over in the past, and what's something that you're still working on?
Hurdle means...
Like something like was a difficult challenge that you faced as you were getting better at music. And so something that you've that has been a challenge that you've overcome, and then another thing that is a challenge that you're still working on.
That I have quote unquote overcome, man, playing upright bass. Like I've only played upright bass for like, it will kind of be 3 years now. I think it will be, it should be 3 years now. But I only played electric when I was in Venezuela. Like I learned all the like the basics of jazz and stuff in electric. And then when I got here to the US, people were like, yeah, you can't just go pursue a career in music. As an electric bass player, you have to play upright. Yeah. And that was pretty terrifying because I had no idea. So when I was in Tulsa Community College in my first semester, I didn't have a car. So I would just go there like at 7:30 a.m. and leave like at 8 p.m. Yeah. And like take all my classes and stuff. At all my breaks, I would just go and practice with the upright like 2-3 hours a day. And it was rough because it's like in electric, I already felt comfortable that I was getting somewhere. But with the upright, it's just like ground zero. Like you still know like the distribution of the notes. I still knew like what to play, especially in jazz, because now the sound of the upright is what I was trying to look for. Yeah. Because in electric, you never quite get it. Yeah. But the technique part was so terrifying. I was like, man, like I don't know how to make this sound. I don't know how to make this sound good. Like my hand hurts, you know, my body hurts. So like I have to stand up. And what do you mean I can't have a chair? I mean, you can sit on a stool for an upright.
Yeah,
but you
know, a really tall stool.
Yeah. So it was really hard, and I feel that like my efforts and being so stressed out about it actually led to something. Yeah. Like I perform gigs. I am playing with the UCO top jazz ensemble, and like I've been to places like China. We're gonna go to Switzerland. Yeah. We're playing in the Gen Jazz Conference in Reno, Nevada. You know, we've done all these things, and it's like, wow, like I could not play this instrument 3 years ago, and I'm doing this, and I am kind of proud of myself for doing that. And it was rough. It was hard. I cannot say that it was like, it was easy. No, it's not. Yeah. But I will say that the thing that I'm still struggling with is like the classical part of the instrument. Like I didn't, even though that I grew up with like multiple genres and stuff, classical was definitely not one of those. Yeah. So like I don't have an intuition for classical music. Like I don't really like, I'm starting to listen to it, but it's still kind of hard. So like developing that part that like the bow is an extension of my hand, it still takes time. I've got better, but I will still not play a classical at all. Like, don't call me for that.
Right. Are the calluses on your right hand harder than the calluses on your left hand?
Man, I don't know anymore. I think at one point, like, you don't get calluses. It's just like your fingers could just get really hard. Yeah. It's really strange. Like your skin is just...
Yeah, just eventually just like flaking it off every once in a while. Yeah. Sorry if that scares people away who want to learn a string instrument, but like, yep, calluses. It's part of the thing.
It's part of it.
Okay. What contributes to a successful artist or musician?
Man, being humble, I'll say. Besides that, because I don't believe in talent necessarily. There are people that are kind of like gifted, and they just get things incredibly easy and fast and stuff. Sure. But it's also relying on first of all, being humble to like understand what you can do and what you should do about it. Because if you had the innate ability to do it, you should be honest with yourself and define, well, am I gonna exploit that and be even better than what I could be, or just do something else? Because there's people that are just talented that decide not to pursue music. That happens, you know. Yeah. But most of the people like that are successful, they were not talented at one point, you know. Like there's a lot of people that they were just like, oh, I was not the best piano player. It took me like 3 years to figure it out, and then they're like one of the best piano players in the world. So just put in the effort. It's just having dedication. It's just, there's a lot of factors that leads to that. Primarily it's just that dedication. Just be focused on what you want to do, have an idea of what you want to do. I think that's a big issue in musicians, is that we find out all this kind of paths that we can take. It's like, I can be an arranger and composer for video games or for movies, or I can just be a great performer, or I can be a teacher, or I can there's like this bajillion paths that you can find, and sit down and define what you want to do. You can always take that class about composition for video games, or you can always take the class for like jazz and advanced improv another day. You know, focus on something, be good at it, develop it, and then explore yourself.
Damn, freaking at me next time. You just like described me.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Do you separate art from the artist? Can't remember if I asked you this last time.
No, man, it's really that's a tough question, because just like there's so many artists that like they're all the things that they do is so amazing, but they're jerks or they're not really good people.
Yeah.
And it is really hard.
Miles Davis.
Miles Davis was a jerk. Like, he was an amazing musician, but he was a jerk. There's all those examples of this. Like, people are gonna hate me for what I'm about to say, but like, there's examples of people like Wynton or Branford Marsalis. They're like huge figures. I love their music. They're incredibly huge figures, but they're so close-minded that like they kind of like tear down like what they tried to build for the longest time. So I don't know. And I mean, there's people that actually have committed crimes and stuff. So
yeah.
I try to, but at the same time, I don't want to, if that makes sense. Because there's some times that are just like, man, Miles Davis was such a great figure, you know? And like, you can't deny that.
Yeah.
So, and he changed music, we like it or not.
Yeah.
So sometimes in certain aspects, I believe that it's important to recognize what they did and what it brought for like, and that's just for all kinds of art, you know, what those persons have brought to the table. Yeah. And it's important to recognize that, but never forget that like
there was still some bad stuff in there too.
I always remember the example of Oasis, that like they're such a cute band and stuff like that, and then they're just complete jerks.
Just the worst. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, definitely. Why music and not anything else? Why not become an engineer?
Yeah. Man, there's something that like, this is a question that like I actually asked to a lot of people. It's like, why did we choose this? You know, and those moments in the semester that you just stress because you have 3 recitals and concerts and tests and stuff, and you're like, why did we choose this? Why? Yeah. I think it's because we just felt that we couldn't do anything else. Like there's something that just calls us, and it was like, I have to do this. Like otherwise my life is gonna lost meaning, you know? And it just calls you. I don't know why. Just like, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah. We die otherwise.
Yeah.
What's something that people don't normally know about you?
Man, I don't know. Because I feel that I'm a pretty like open person, but then like my girlfriend says that sometimes I come out as mysterious, and I'm like, why? I try to not to, but okay.
It's because of the accent.
I guess.
Like, oh, he's foreign. He's mysterious.
Let's see. I guess I could say that I like a lot of other styles of music that are not jazz. So people sometimes don't think about that. So sometimes I start like talking about, I don't know, Oasis, or then I go to like bands like metal bands like Lamb of God or Mastodon, and then I go to like reggae, and it's like I love Bob Marley, and then I know of a lot of like Latin American music, and whether it's folk and traditional music or it's just pop music and stuff like that. So like sometimes people don't know that I have all this knowledge about a bunch of other things. Yeah.
And it's better that way because you can't just, I'm a jazz guy and that's it.
Yeah. And I don't know, other aspects like personality wise and stuff like that. I do sometimes come out as really serious, and like I am not. I am more like a super goofy person. I think it's just because for the longest time the transition between Spanish to English, you somehow have to develop like a different kind of your own personality, because I feel that I'm a different person when I speak Spanish to when I speak English. Yeah, I think that will be a thing to say. It's like most people are never gonna know me from my Spanish speaking side, you know, because I have a different kind of humor, a different way that I laugh about things and stuff. So like that is a part that a lot of people don't get to know. And just like, I don't know, my girlfriend, whenever I'm talking on the phone, she was like, that's really weird. I never heard you like act like that. And it's like, it just happens, you know, like that's just an aspect of my life that's
there was Chris Ryan has a podcast, wrote some books. But he talked about how a similar thing whenever he would watch a girlfriend they used to have on the phone, he would like notice her mannerisms would change whenever she would speak in a different language. And there's something about like how, like almost even comparing it to like, do you know about dissociative identity disorder?
No,
it's like multiple personality disorder. Yeah. It's like almost in that realm where you almost like physically change or like mentally change your personality whenever you code switch. But yeah, that's a different thought.
We can go in that rabbit hole for like
right
3 hours.
What advice do you have for musicians starting out?
Man, don't give up. Like, this might be harsh, but it's like your first tunes might suck, your first gig might suck, your first recital might suck, you know, and that's just gonna happen, you know. That's just how you get better. Just don't give up. Just like understand that there's people that like, man, I put myself as an example. Like, I've never been a fast learner. When I was like in that institute in Venezuela, I actually failed solfege twice because I could not get it, you know, and I was always frustrated that my best friend that was a drummer like passed the class with an A immediately. And I was like, why can I not get it? Like, I play a harmonic instrument, whatever. I'm like always thinking about chords and stuff all day, you know. So like, it's just the dedication. Just like try to get better. Just practice. And I know that sometimes it's hard to practice. I know that sometimes it's like you kind of like don't feel the motivation, but you're going somewhere. It's hard for a person to see yourself and be like, oh, I can do this. Yeah. Or like, oh, I have changed. I've got better, because sometimes you don't see it, but other people do see it. Yeah. So like sometimes things like recording yourself for a while, like shows that. Yeah. So I will advise that. I will advise explore all kinds of music, compose anything that you want. It doesn't matter if it has 1 chord or 300 chords. Yeah. Just experiment with it. Just listen to new music. Transcribe a lot. I feel that that's a thing that like if you're not a jazz musician, you can do it too. You know, you just play riffs from other bands. Yeah, you just play drum grooves from like other bands, and you just get that language into you. And eventually, you yourself is gonna come out. You know, with all of those things added.
Sweet. Navigating away from music.
Okay.
God indeed. Yeah. What is the role of spirituality or religion in your life?
Let's see. I have to start with like this story or my background. As a Venezuelan, and we talked about this, it's like I'm a Catholic, or at least I grew up Catholic. Yeah. Because everyone in Venezuela is just Catholic. Yeah. So,
or at least pretends to be.
Yeah. And so, but my way to connect with spirituality was really interesting, because I will say that my grandma was a very important figure, my great grandma and my grandma, because especially my grandma was like a really tough woman. Yeah. And she was always kind of like, she like didn't trust a lot, like churches and people that like work directly with the church and stuff. Because she like doesn't trust a lot of people. Like my grandma is very tough. Like, you know, like, you always have to like stand your ground. Don't trust in everyone, you know. And like, man, I love my grandma. So she was always kind of like, you can trust Jesus, but you don't have to trust the church. Like, don't do it. It's like, you don't have to trust those people if you don't want to. Huh. So I really admire that part of her. That made me question a lot of things, and made me understand the role of like the things that I believed and the things that I stopped believing and the things that I started believing again or whatever. They're more a role of like culture. They're my family. They're my background. There's like some sort of comfort to it. Like my great grandma taught me how to pray when I was like 2 years old. Like I don't even remember him teaching me that, but I still remember all the words and stuff. And I take it more like not in the religious aspect, as more of something that connects me with my family, with my culture, with just what made me be who I am. Yeah. You know, so like I don't go to church. I don't really believe in established religion at all. Yeah. Like, so I don't necessarily pray for the reasons that people pray necessarily. It's just kind of like it's kind of like a way to meditate and connect with them. I don't know. The things that, I don't know, made me happy, make me happy. So.
Yeah. Then what is your definition of God?
Man, going back to like my grandma and like also my mom influenced me in this. Kind of like they believe more than like that God is not necessarily this like giant guy in the sky, just like you can't do this or you should do that or whatever. You know, it's more like God is all the good things that happen in the world. God is love. God is like that in humans that leads you to like help others, help yourself, take care of, you know.
Yeah.
It's just all the good feeling. It's all I will say love. Like my mom will always tell me like God is love.
Yeah.
And like on the other side of the coin, it's just like the quote unquote devil instead of being this like bad guy underground that's like, do this. It's more like all the bad things that we humans have, that the decision of like yell at someone, the decision of being doing bad things to other people, the decision to being selfish, the decision of being can go all the way into like being racist, being discriminatory or discriminate people, you know. Those are things are the devil, not an imaginary guy underground.
And those influences of talking about decisions, is free will an illusion? And or why?
I believe that like we do have free will, just people have it harder than others. It's just because like you grew up in a certain way, you grew up in environments that leads you to take certain decisions, see some things, believe some things, so whatever, and that could be really like stuck in your head, you know.
Yeah.
Someone that grew up in a racist household doesn't have to be racist, but probably for a while will be hard to like be like, I want to get out of this, you know, but like my mom told me this, but like I have to break from that.
Yeah.
So like you have the decision to be okay, you know, I'm gonna think different.
Yeah.
It's just like all the people that have terrible lives might do terrible decisions, but they right in the moment before making terrible decisions, they can decide not to, you know. It's just really hard, you know, because everything has pushed you to that end.
Yeah.
But at the end, you choose.
Yeah.
You decide not to do it.
Since you are not necessarily religious, how do you determine what good behavior is?
Man, that is a hard question because morals and stuff and ethics are like relative. We go into like very philosophical terms.
That's the point.
I always base on things based on like acceptance and love. You know, just love people, just be acceptance of what they do. Just don't hurt others, just don't hurt yourself. And be forgiving. Those are just kind of like the main factors that like that I feel that they're more pure. You know, and those teachings might come from like my Catholic background and sometimes just by logic and things that I've experienced in life. That makes me think that it's kind of like, man, there's people that have done terrible things, but like if I just get mad at them, if I'm just angry at them, if I just hate them, that just continues a cycle of hate. And it's like, you know, just accepting, just forgiving that person. They might do it again. Who knows? You know, there's bad people out there. But understanding that I don't have to connect with that. I don't have to like, they don't have to get hurt. I don't have to hurt myself because of them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Kinda.
No, I like that. How do we reduce the division?
Man, just accepting that people are going to be different, accepting that you might be wrong. Well, you said that with, like, you always say that. It's like, accepting that like maybe my truth is not the real truth, but it is for me, you know. Like if you're a really religious person and that's what you think it's right and that's what's for you, and that's gonna be right for you, but not for other people. So just accepting that other people are gonna be different and that you know, that's just how it is. No one can be the same. No one can follow the same religion, like ideologies, whatever, dress the same, act the same, look the same.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
This one's interesting given our perspective, but how do you live with or against the selfishness that pervades American culture?
Man, it is rough because I think, and it could go either way. Like in a Latin American culture, everything is based on kind of like help your friends, help your people that like you, and even help the people that you don't know, you know. That is just a thing that happens naturally. And I mean, that leads ultimately, sometimes it leads to corruption. Sometimes it leads to like, hey, dude, you're the guard in this concert that I want to go. Could you just let me in? And people just go in for free. And then that tears down like the business. And then no one can bring an artist. So it has its downsides. Sure. But everything is based onto like you feel sympathetic for the other person and you decide to help. And sometimes the mistake is that you don't know that like what you're helping actually brings consequences. Sure. It's not good. But it is that people like kind of helps each other. There's not that I feel that American culture is based on the ideology of the self-made man. That it's kind of like, if I work hard and just me, you know, I can be rich and happy, you know, and it's like, oh, you didn't help me, so screw you. And that comes with like just people naturally. They're like, oh, why do I have to like pay money for other people to be happy? They can just do them themselves, you know. So like, I feel that like, even people can be as open-minded or close-minded. I feel that that's still a thing that's very part of the American culture. That it's like, I worked for this. It's just for me. Yeah. You know. So.
But then how do you interact with that?
Man, just trying to like. I feel that instead of trying to change them, like being like, oh, you have to like open your mind to like this. It's just kind of like showing how I do things. And some people respond really nicely to it and some people don't. Some people are like, I've had people like, I worked for a while in a Starbucks because I just quit finally.
Wow.
I got a better job. But like there will be people that sometimes I will like give them a drink for free because it could be because like, I don't know, the machine was not working and I didn't feel like fixing like the computer to like make them pay. Yeah. Or there will be just times like, man, this person was super nice to me. Everyone has been a jerk to me lately. So like, let me just give them for free. And people will be like, no, I want to pay for it. It's like, but I just want to give you the drink for free. I actually had a lady that she was like, no, I want to pay for it. And I was like,
sure.
Okay. Yeah. It's all good. You know, but it's always showing that compassion to people that like, that sometimes people find it like interesting. Like, wow, like I didn't expect that. And sometimes I think that creates more change than just, you have to be like this. So,
yeah. And also the massive corporation that is Starbucks, I think can take a few free drinks here and there. So I think you're good. What are you optimistic about for our future?
You mean as a country or as people or?
Yes, however you want to take that.
I think people think that like we live like we always like, especially like now with like media and everything, we think that we live like the worst time ever. You know, like everything's wrong. It's like I feel that like before it was way worse. We just didn't know what was going on. Yeah. Because you couldn't just check your cell phone and be like, what's going on in Singapore? You know, like, no, you just like in your home and it's like, if it appears in the newspaper, it appears. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. So I feel that people is getting better. People is getting nicer. People are like, the world is getting more diverse and open-minded. And I feel that eventually we're going to get to a point that we just accept whoever. Yeah. However, you know, just do you and do whatever you want, you know, as long as it like, there should always be like a slight amount of rules. To like, you know, morals, ethics, whatever. But I feel that eventually we're going to get to the point that like we can accept people. We can, you know. Yeah. I feel that extremism always happen. Bad people is always going to exist. But there's like, they're just getting smaller and smaller. Yeah. Their groups.
Yeah. I like that. That makes me feel good. Do you believe that humans are evil by nature?
I don't think people are either evil or good by nature. They just decide to like, kind of like how I explained, like all these decisions and all this life pushes you to somewhere. And then you decide if you're going to do it or not. I think the problem is whenever someone truly becomes evil, it's whenever you find satisfaction in actually making someone else miserable. Yeah. That's when it gets an issue. Then like you find that like the only way to make yourself happy, and because I think we're all in like that pursuit of like what makes us feel good, what makes us happy. Some people like to eat ice cream. Some people like to do good things for others. Some people just like to watch Netflix, and some people just like other ones to be miserable. Yeah. and it happens, you know, and it's terrible. And I wish those people didn't exist, but they do. So that is when someone truly becomes evil, but not necessarily they grew up. It's not that they were by nature like that.
Yeah. Speaking of the things that make you happy, you're just like teeing me up with these segues.
Sorry.
No, that's a good thing.
Oh, okay.
What makes you content?
I think the feeling, the fact that like I was always scared. Then when I left Venezuela, it's just like never being able to like connect with like people here like the American culture or whatever. And I think there's pros and cons about the American culture, just like there's pros and cons about the Venezuelan culture.
Yeah.
People think that it's like, it's all bad or it's all good. No, there's good things, there's bad things. I just have to like, what are the good things from Venezuela? What are the good things for America? How do I put them together and live a happy life? But I think one of the things that made me content is that I was able to find people that like, I was able to understand that like a language barrier and a culture barrier it's not enough for me to connect with people. There's people that I feel comfortable with. There's people that like I relate to, and I've met friends. I've met just close people, whether it's in my job, whether it's UCO, whether it was Tulsa Community College. Like I am dating an American girl, you know. Yeah. So like our backgrounds are completely different, and I still feel happy with where I'm at. Yeah. And it's incredible. So I think that makes me feel content discovering that like people can break through those cultural barriers and just be happy with each other.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I always have to like, I feel like I always have to preface this because it's so forward, but like, when will you be satisfied?
I don't think I will ever be satisfied. I don't think anyone will ever be satisfied about things, because I think, I don't know, this might be weird because like my mom kind of like said some things that are kind of like around this topic, but it's like whenever you're satisfied, it's because you're depressed, you know. Like my mom was very like, if you think that you had enough and you're cool with like what you have and you just kind of sit in your room and you can be like, well, I can die now, you know, you're not alive anymore, you know. So like you can always find more things. You can always explore more ideas, and that doesn't mean that you can, that like you want more money or like one thing. Sure. But like you can always just look for new stuff, you know, from simple things like discovering new music, from simple things that meeting new people. Just I think there is a thing we can never be satisfied about. We can never be like, I've met enough people in my life. I'm just like,
yeah, sure. And then another sort of weird one, but I still enjoy asking it. What's the point?
About
yeah.
What is the point of, man, about life? That is pretty deep. It's just like, because we can just be like, we're just a piece of rock in space just flying around with some life on it. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of other ones. Yeah. Well, at least I hope there's a bunch of other ones.
Sure.
Somewhere.
But I'm asking you.
I think the point is just to, I don't know, man, just live a fulfilling life. Just be always in search of something that it's good and that makes us happy as a person, as a community, as a planet. Yeah. And I don't think it really matters if we're like insignificant or not, if we're the only life in space or not. Like I think we can just make ourselves happy with whatever we do, whether it's small or not. Yeah.
Cool. What advice do you have for people in general?
Just understand other people. Like understand that, like, be nice. Always be nice. It doesn't matter if the other person is being a jerk to you. Just be nice. Just we all have terrible days. People are different, way different than you. Like some people like talking about rock climbing. I don't know anything about rock climbing, you know, but that's what makes them happy. So yeah, just be understanding of other people.
Yeah. And I mean, you have like calluses on your fingers. You might be pretty good at rock climbing.
I might try, or I might fall and die. I don't know.
Right. Like, well, you know, hang with the right people, and you'll actually exactly. And lastly, cake or pie?
Oh, that's hard.
One of the hardest questions I ask.
Man, it is hard because it's like, I feel weird that I have to like tie everything to like Venezuela and like foreign and stuff like that. It's like there's no pies in Venezuela. It's just cake, you know. So like forever I was like, cakes are great. And then I tried this stereotypical like super like southern like Midwestern like apple homemade pie by like a grandma, and it is incredible. It was like the best thing I've ever had. And I was like, so for now, even though I've been here for like 3.5 years, I'm in the pie team for now because it's something new, I guess. Yeah. But it might change. Yeah.
What is best pie?
Man, I love apple pie and pecan pie. I think those two.
Yeah.
For now.
Sweet. Classics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nelson, thank you for doing this with me.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me.
Well, your stuff. What do you have going on?
Let's see. Saints Session. It's a weekly jazz and jazz related event that happens every Thursday in Saints in the Plaza District, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. It's free of charge, so you can just come and sit. I recommend people to like support the venue and support us by buying drinks and always tipping the bands and the bartenders and inviting people, spread the voice. You know, you don't have to be someone that knows about jazz to go there. You can just go and hang out, you know. I've seen multiple people that just like come in and they're like, I was not expecting this, and then they just sit and have fun. And then they come to me and it's like, man, this event is dope, I'm gonna come back. And they've come back. And it's great, you know. They don't know anything about jazz. They're just kind of like, I like drinking a beer and just watching someone cool music play. So it is pretty great. As I mentioned, I want to create this safe space for jazz musicians, for art music. So and besides that, I'll say follow us in social media at SaintsSession, follow us in OK Sessions, follow our brothers in Othello Session, and follow me in Instagram or Facebook at Gonzalez03, or my Facebook that has my full super long name, Nelson Gonzalez Barreto. I am trying to post music. I am trying to post a lot of like the stuff that I've been working on. I always try to put where I gig and stuff. Eventually, I want to be able to like put together EPs, albums. I'm writing more and more music, so I'm excited about it.
Heck yeah. What's your like full name?
It will be Nelson Alejandro Gonzalez Barreto.
Yeah. I'm Santiago Andres Ramones Machado. So it's like, it's a whole thing. But it always sounds super cool to other people. It's like, whoa, that sounds foreign and nice. But yeah.
Have you ever had to fill out some paperwork where you can't put the two last names because it
doesn't fit? This is so dumb, but like, so my legal last name is Ramones Machado. It's both. That's what's on my driver's license. And sometimes it gets really annoying because if it's for like nonsense stuff, I'll just put Ramones. Like, why do I need to put my second last name? But like for whatever reason, whenever I got DACA, they, because I think whenever you fill it out, it's like, here's your name, but then what's some other names that you've gone by?
Yeah.
And so I put like, Ramones Machado is like, and so they actually put that one as my full last name. And so I'm stuck with both last names as like my legal last names. Yeah. And so sometimes stuff, like if they check my social security or something, they're like, oh, well, that's your full last name. And so sometimes I'll like, get notifications back, be like, hey, something didn't line up with your last name. It's like,
man, that happens to me with taxes, with like FAFSA, everything. Because some of them you have to put the dash, the little like dash between the Gonzalez Barreto, and sometimes you don't, and sometimes and like there was one time or something, I can't remember what it was. I was filling out some paperwork. I think it was for a job application that it asked me your name as spelled in your social security. Yeah. And like it didn't fit. Like legit, there was no like capacity for me to put Gonzalez Barreto in the thing. So I ended up being like Gonzalez Bar. And they were like, this is not your last name. I was like, it is. It just doesn't fit. Just update your page,
Yeah. Sometimes people have really long last names. Just let us fill out the thing. Or I don't know. I feel like anyways, that's a whole other conversation. Well, once again, thank you for doing this with me.
Thank you, man.
I'm Santiago Ramones.
I'm Nelson Gonzalez.
You can find everything that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com. I make music. There's all of my singer-songwriter stuff, actually on just the main page, just like my demos. But then you could just go to like the music page, and there's like singer-songwriter stuff. There's some like electronic composer stuff. There's some Power Cycle stuff. Stuff with Power Cycle. Recently, we just got on Teespring, and so it's like you can, I've been designing and putting stuff on shirts, so you can go on there and just get like the Power Cycle logo on a shirt, or you can get like one of our album covers, which is Too Many Damn Cables, and it's just like a whole bunch of cables on a shirt. Title. I think it looks pretty dope. And so you can get it like in any color you want, and so it's like they're fairly affordable, and like you're supporting us, so it's like cool. We have merch that you can wear, or if you like work in IT, and like, hey, like, what do I do? It's like you can buy this mug that just says Power Cycle on it, and it's like this is what you're going to be doing most of the time. So just look at my mug and turn your freaking electronic device off and then on, because that will solve it most of the time. which is why we're called that. And what all do I have going on? I don't know about Norman Music Fest, but they haven't.
You're also playing in Saints, though.
I am playing at Saints in May 7th. And as we already know, that is a Thursday night.
Yeah.
And Nelson will be there playing bass, and I'll have a jazz band doing some different stuff than what I normally do. So yeah, check that out. I always end my podcast with my 3 things. They shape my life philosophy. Those 3 things are: love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong.